What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode here at the Masculine Health Solutions podcast, where I am joined with Diane Spiva, and we're going to discuss basically testosterone, how it affects us guys, and how you may be doing all kinds of things to set yourself up for either failure or success. But first and foremost, Diane, how are you today, ma'am?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Hey, you know what? We are super happy to have you here because there's a lot that you can enlighten us on, and a lot of things that we as men we neglect. Right. First
Okay.
and foremost, it's kind of I think one of the biggest things that I was reading in your email was how a lot of guys, will suffer from erectile dysfunction. And it's not usually till we get into these big issues that we start looking for help. So the first thing I want to ask you right off the bat, what is one of the number one contributing factors to erectile dysfunction?
So the number one contributing factors that contribute to that are just lifestyle changes. A lot of times it's those things that besides medications, high blood pressure, stress, if you're not getting enough sleep, those are the major, if you're not eating right, all those things will eventually lead to having erectile dysfunction. 100% of all men will have erectile dysfunction at some point in their life, may just be intermittent, but 100% of those men, when they have that happen the first time, they all have performance anxiety. So whatever we can do to educate men will help them to realize, sometimes it's just something that's in that moment, not something long term. But we want to help to enlighten men to know what they can do to prevent that from happening to them.
100%. Yeah, because it is something that, a lot of guys will run into it. I mean, for myself, it was too much alcohol, but
And that's
figured
one of
that
those
one out.
things.
Luckily,
It
it's a one
vasodilates.
time.
So
Yeah, it kind of did the opposite. I'm like, thank you, Jack Daniels. But that being said, for the guys that do suffer long term or it's starting to become a recurring theme in their lives, how is that tied into testosterone?
Everything is kind of with regard to sexual activity, obviously your genitals are involved in that, and specifically your testicles. So that's your brain plays a part in it and sending messages to your genitals to do what they're supposed to do. But if your penis is a muscle, and it's a muscle that if you're not using it, you're going to lose length and girth. It's like any other muscle, it atrophies. But
Mhm.
it's all about blood flow. What gives you an erection is you have two tubes that travel the length of the penis, the full length of the penis, called the corpus cavernosum, and it's spongy material. And an erection is when those two tubes become engorged with blood. So
Mhm.
whatever can prevent that full engorgement of those corpus cavernosum, that interferes with your ability to get that full erection or be able to maintain that erection at all. So difficulty obtaining or maintaining erection can be a problem.
100%. Yeah, which is not an issue that a lot of guys want, I don't think.
I guess you asked me the question how testosterone plays a role to that, and I kind of missed that with that. Whenever you have, I know there's many different causes of decreased testosterone levels in life, but whenever those levels are down, it's usually because of stress in your life, and that
Mhm.
stress. If you're younger, that cortisol level goes up. You have an enzyme in your body called aromatase enzyme, and it's
Yeah.
there. How much you have kind of depends genetically on how much your daddy had. If your daddy had it was an aromatizer, you're an aromatizer. So it kind of depends on him. But when you have that stress level, you start to put on that that weight around your midsection, that midlife tire. That's where aromatase enzyme kind of likes to stay and play. So when
Mhm.
your blood is kind of traveling through that, it's picking up that testosterone and it's aromatizing that testosterone. That is, it's converting it over to estrogen levels. So excess estrogen leads to that decreased sex drive and can actually significantly interfere with your ability to maintain an erection. So all of it's always called hormone balancing for that reason. One hormone
Mhm.
affects another hormone, affects another hormone. So whatever we can do to help to prevent that from happening, keeping that testosterone level increase so you have good sex drive and you know that performance, that peak performance ability.
100%. Yeah, because That's the one thing that I always found that was correlated, right? It almost seems like, the more weight gain you see in men, the more, I don't want to say feminized they become. However, there are certain things that are kind of undeniable that come with it, like the man boobs, right? It's kind of like the
Yep.
big midlife kind of tire that you referred to, which I'm like, I'm gonna keep that because that makes sense.
Yep.
But it's kind of
Yep.
like the big pop belly and all that. It all starts to really show up.
It is. And when you were 18, 19, 20, 21, and you had that sudden surge of testosterone, everything just worked great. Half the time you didn't eat right. You certainly didn't sleep right, but everything, it slapped muscle on you. You felt great. You had this unending energy. And when you go through those things that happen in life, and that cortisol level starts to be put on, you don't have that anymore. So it's it's that testosterone plays a significant role in your ability to get an erection, maintain an erection, and how you do that. There's lots of things, it involves, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure that you're eating right, that you are doing cardio and resistance training. Those two things play a key role in that ability to maintain that. And how you handle stress. We live today in a really stressful environment, and that makes us um, have a lot of cortisol level put on that weight. And then when that estrogen level comes up, and that's where I guess I started, kind of went to the wayside, but
No,
that
it's
estrogen level goes up when you have that high level, 11 or 1200 testosterone level when you were 21. Your body just made a little bit of estrogen, just enough estradiol to keep the aggression off that testosterone. So when you have
mm,
higher levels in that, it's not because you're making it, it's because you're converting your testosterone to that. And that's
interesting.
when you'll have that anxiety, depression, and moodiness.
Interesting, because it's I got a lot of buddies who have done steroids, right? And they talk about when they were on test, they were just like, they felt like Superman. The problem is when they come off it, where I see these guys and they all get depressed, and I'm like, what's up with you, man? Like you went from being all like, high and mighty about yourself, and all of a sudden now he's like, I'm battling depression, taking pills. I'm just like, I don't know what happened to you, man, but it's
Yeah.
I found out later is that the hormones are all off. Can you talk a little bit more on how hormones kind of need to be regulated within the body?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the same types of things we just mentioned about regulating those things is, routine exercise. So be sure you're getting, you're always doing that cardio exercise, keeping your heart and your lungs in good shape, but doing resistance training too, keeping that
Hmm.
metabolism intact. It helps to build muscle mass and maintain muscle mass when you're not eating enough protein, or you're eating bad foods that are putting that weight on in the wrong places. Then it tends to mess with your hormones. And there's some foods that do that worse than others. Fried fatty foods definitely.
Yeah.
Some of those starches. If your alcohol can certainly messes with that. It's not saying we can't have it. We've all used alcohol as an aphrodisiac before, but at a certain point, it kind of it's counterproductive, and it vasodilates, and all that blood you're trying to get there just goes right out the other side, and so you're chasing your tail. So
No, it is true though, because you do see that all the time where it's like, oh man, I had one too many, and then it wasn't happening.
no, it won't. You got that, and we all know the name for that. We,
Yeah.
with regard to when your friends came off of testosterone, the reason that they had more problems is most of the people that do it either on outside of medical management, or by
Hmm.
somebody that isn't really good with managing hormone and doesn't realize all the side effects of that exogenous testosterone.
Yeah.
When you're getting exogenous testosterone, it's tricking your brain. Your pituitary gland is monitoring everything, and when it perceives you're getting testosterone somewhere else, it quits sending that message to your testicles to make more testosterone. And so then it
Hmm.
becomes that your natural testosterone levels died. And so if we don't protect your testicles by keeping them turned on while you're on testosterone, then when you come off of it, your testicles will be, they'll be smaller. You'll get that
Yeah.
volume back if it hasn't been long term, but that volume equals function. So they're coming off that testosterone, and they're diving if somebody didn't have them on something to protect their testicles.
So that's an interesting because I've heard that before too. I was talking to a urologist, Dr. Justin Brandeis, and he said, yeah, he actually was dealing with an ex NFL player. And he said that this guy had used so much testosterone and so much juice over the course of his career that his balls were literally the size of raisins. Like they were completely
Yep.
atrophied. So
They
the
will.
one question I have with TRT, I guess, versus testosterone, or even for guys that do either, because you mentioned how you guys have found a way to basically protect the testicles during this process. How do you go about doing that?
So when we have, in urology too. So before I worked at Liberty, I also my background is urology, men's health. So that's what I did for a living. So what we would do is, if you were on testosterone, we would put you on something that preserved your function. So I tell you to kind of think of your testicles like a volume dial. The testosterone is turning that
Hmm.
volume down, but putting you either on. We used to use HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, which is a female hormone. It's
Okay.
one that women have when they're pregnant. When we give that to men, it keeps their testicles turned on. But we had some manufacturing plants that the FDA closed down that were making that for other reasons
Mm.
in the United States. So 5 of them were closed down, and there's only 2 left, and they couldn't keep up with the load of those of us that do that prescribe hormone replacement therapy. So literally we ended up switching over to what we always gave to the younger guys to maintain their fertility anyways, and that's Clomid or clomiphene. So it's a
Okay, yeah.
fertility drug we give men and women, but what it's doing is it's stimulating that gentleman's testicles to make more testosterone themselves. So it's augmenting their natural abilities, so we don't have to give quite as much anabolic steroid, which testosterone cypionate is an anabolic steroid that's FDA approved for treating low testosterone, and that's our intent. Keep those testicles turned on, but give you the benefits of having that testosterone as long as you're on it.
That's super interesting because I mean, I've heard of Clomid, and I mean, I've watched a couple podcasts where guys talk about steroids, and then I'm just kind of, I mean, I'm not a pharmacist, and I don't know half this stuff, right? But I've always kind of wondered because they talk about how when you're coming off the whole PCT cycle side of things, right? The post cycle therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of so me, I've always wanted to stay natural. I have no desire to go on testosterone right now. I feel pretty good, right? So maybe
Yeah,
when I
no reason
turn
for you
maybe when I
to.
turn 40 or 50, maybe I'll look into it, right? But the one question I had is what if somebody who's not taking testosterone, what if he took Clomid? What would happen then? Would it just no, go
You
ahead.
can. We have some people who just want to do it naturally themselves, but it's not so natural if we're kind of tweaking their testicles. But that's what the Clomid does, is it's just turning the volume up, and so they will produce more testosterone naturally. It's one, testosterone, cypionate or the other anabolic steroids like nandrolone decanate, deca,
Yeah,
or
Deca.
Winstrol, Anavar, those that men are using for the bodybuilding. Those things all have some effects on the body, but the Clomid, and certainly if you are playing any kind of sports that you're accountable, that you aren't allowed to use performance enhancing
Drugs of
drugs
any
such as
kind,
those,
yeah.
then they're going to be checking them. They can take Clomid is perfectly, it's natural. They're not going to, they don't pick up Clomid. So that one is one that's just making you make more. It's your testosterone. It's not
Interesting.
exogenous.
Interesting. So it's basically just forcing your testicles to stimulate more.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
and we can see where that lands. Some men, depending on what their underlying cause, if they have low testosterone to begin with, was it primary hypogonadism? Is there another reason? Because it may be that the Clomid isn't enough to get them where they want to be. But most men, it does work very well, and it's an option. It doesn't have some of the same impact and same side effects, I should say, of testosterone replacement therapy. And some of those side effects men want. So
I can imagine. Yeah. And can you talk more on hypogonadism? Because you mentioned it right there, and it's something that definitely I think we could all use a better definition, like a in depth.
so hypogonadism is, your testicles are your gonads. Women's
Hmm.
gonads are their ovaries. It's where you're making, anything that's where your fertility is derived. So when we look at that, when we say hypo, that means low gonad, means low
Hmm.
function of your testicles. That's what, and when it's not functioning well, not only will you have decreased sperm and ejaculate, but you'll have decreased testosterone production as well.
Excellent. And that's because that was leading right to my next question was is this related to the massive rates of low sperm motility that we're seeing in this day and age? Because The more I read into it, I'm like, okay, it's popping up again. And it's also correlated with our low fertility rates. Do you think it's one of those things that just going hand in hand? And
It is. I think that there's a lot of studies right now going on that are actually trying to address that. I can tell you that those of us that have worked in men's, the urologist I worked with before, he was, one of the top men's health specialists in the United States, and specifically, he said that in the last 10 years that we've noticed a dramatic decline in testosterone levels across the board, but even in much younger people. So it's not uncommon for us to have 25 or 30-year-old men now coming in with testicular hypofunction or hypogonadism.
geez. What are some of the factors that you think are really playing into that in this day and age? Because it does seem like there's a lot of different tricky things. It's kind of like because I started researching more about bisphenol A's, the BPA's, the plastics, the microplastics, and now that we're consuming, like, I think it's like a credit card a week. That's disgusting. But what are
It
some of
is.
the factors that you think are really playing into this?
I think it's what we're eating. I think some of it is probably related to where our food sources are coming from. Are they, steroid, or if they're giving some of the, if we're a meat eater, there's some steroid use in some of those animals. I think it's affecting our hormones. I think it's also not eating enough fruits and vegetables. Just a healthy diet. I think stress plays a huge role in it. I think the stress levels are much
Yeah.
higher today than they were even 10 or 20 years ago. Certainly, I have the scale for testosterone, the lab scale, it's 264 to 916 is that scale. That it's a big window, but that was developed back in the 1950s, and it was based off of a very small population of farmers in Pennsylvania. So it didn't take into account, it's not multicultural. It certainly didn't take into account other ages, but certainly back in the 50s, they didn't have the same stress levels on a farm level that we have here in today's society, just, in everyday life.
Yeah, that's interesting. And let's say if somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I suspect that my test levels are low." How do you guys go about? What's the process look like for somebody to get onto TRT?
We always do draw lab work to begin with. I don't mind, we take a full history when they come in, full history and physical. We talk about, what treatments options are. Usually I can go ahead and just by their symptoms tell
Yeah.
whether I think they have low testosterone or excess estrogen, and kind of come up with a plan and have that discussion. But we always get a baseline testosterone level anyway, because we want to know what they were before we started on anything. A lot of insurances don't pay for testosterone therapy. Some do, but if they do, they're very strict that you need to have 2 low testosterone levels. You can't do one, isn't enough to prove to them. They got to have 2. And they want them to be their testosterone level to be below 300 on both of those in order to pay for it. Men, if you're in your 30s or 40s and if your testosterone level is 400 or 500, you probably are also symptomatic. So even then, that testosterone, they're still limiting you on when you can get that, because if you're young, you're used to higher levels of testosterone than that.
Hmm. Yeah, which I mean, because you said the upper part of the scale in that healthy range is around 900, right?
909, it's 264 to 916. So absolutely. And we also know now, which we didn't know when they've never updated that antiquated testosterone scale, but the studies are clear. It shows that, when you were 19, 20, 21, your testosterone level was often 1100 or 1200. So you were on the other side of that scale. So, we use what I was trained to do is we treat a person and, a person and their symptoms, not a number. We use the numbers to keep you safe. So
Yeah.
the side effects to any of these therapies, and it's our job to actually, make sure that we're having that discussion with you up front, and that we're doing those things to prevent those side effects if possible. The benefits should always outweigh the risks or the side effects.
Yeah. But it seems like you guys really have it down to a science, because it's not like you're just rushing in. Here you go, take this. The way that
Yeah.
I see it in the gym. Because what I see in the gym a lot of the times is just, you talk to a big gym over there, he's be like, "Hey man, you just gotta take 1,000 milligrams of this test, man. You'll be jacked." You're like, "Word," Then you just gotta take PCT, you're good to go. But another
It happens
question.
often. I have people who own gyms that are patients, but it catches up with them. At some point, it's going to mess with other things in their life, and those some of those effects are lifelong. So it's better to, rather than to mess with it with somebody who either doesn't know, if they don't really know hormone therapy well, then they're not going to keep you safe. Or if you're trying to do that on your own with things that you can get on the black market, or from for your friends, just be really careful and realize you need to be monitored really carefully to be sure that that you're okay.
Yeah, no, because there's some serious, like, they are powerful compounds. And I've seen it firsthand where I'm like, bro, you put on like 40 pounds of muscle in a week, man. Like, this is incredible. It's like, I kind of, you see some of these guys, but the thing is, I've seen it, I've seen the full effect of it, right? Where it's kind of like, you go from Superman, 6 months, boom, huge. And all of a sudden it's like, and it also messes with people mentally. And that's kind of another question that I have for you is, how do you deal with guys who may have abused testosterone in the past and now come to you looking for some type of guidance, like, hey, you know what? I'm a little bit broken due to what I did. What would be the protocol? How do you guys go about fixing this dude?
So it's really important to get all that a thorough set of lab work up front, just to see where they're at and what we need to be watching. I'm really a little more conservative. I will take you up to that 11 or 1200 range if it's safe for you to do, but I have that conversation that it's slow and steady. I start everybody out at a nice even mid-level range, and every standard protocol is you have to have your labs drawn at least once every 3 months, so 90 days, and those things are fully evaluated. Make sure your blood's not getting too thick, because secondary polycythemia, which is too many red blood cells, can lead to your blood becoming too thick, which
Yeah,
it makes your
viscosity.
blood sluggish. It leads to blood clots, and those blood clots can travel to your heart and cause a heart attack, or to your brain and cause a stroke.
Yeah,
So
no.
it's nothing to mess with. But also, if you're aromatizing and we don't have that, if we're not giving you an aromatase inhibitor to block that estrogen that's converting, if we're giving you testosterone, it's limiting how high your testosterone can go, because it's converting as we go, and that estrogen level is
Yeah.
going up. So we don't want to overblock it, because we don't want you roid raging, but we want you to be able to, testosterone is approved by the FDA for a reason, and that reason is low testosterone or hypogonadism leads to loss of bone mineral density, and that's a big deal. So we want
Yeah.
to be sure that we're protecting your bones, and certainly it can lead to the other reason why we use that in medicine is because low testosterone leads to metabolic syndrome, and metabolic syndrome is,
Yeah.
it's what we're facing in today's society, and it's
Yeah.
a triad of symptoms with that centric obesity, and that center of that triangle with diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. So whatever we can do to help prevent that from progressing will help you to have, to age in a healthier environment, and so you can enjoy those latter years of your life, because nobody wants to take a bunch of medicines for those things as they get older.
No, no, yeah. And that it's interesting because, yeah, metabolic disease is something that, I mean, I've read a couple books already where they really touch on how bad it's getting in our society, but not just that, the financial toll that we're seeing on all the
Mhm.
taxpayers now, because it's kind of like everybody's got heart disease,
Yep,
diabetes, obesity. And obesity, for me, in my opinion, like, I know we live in a day and age where it's accept your body, blah, blah, blah. But the way I kind of see it is obesity is also a precursor for a whole bunch of really nasty diseases,
it
but
is.
nobody wants to talk about it because we might offend people. And that's kind of where, like, as a trainer, I'm like, it's not just about the aesthetics. It's kind of like a guy with big muscles. It's not just aesthetics. I'm like, what are you doing to yourself
No.
internally?
Exactly. Well, it's affecting how they feel. I mean, it's like a vicious cycle. It's creating, the decreased energy. Then they can't get off the couch. They will become immobile, or even disabled at some point from that obesity. So it's nothing to ignore. It's a whole lot easier to prevent that than it is to, or treat it early, than it is to do that later. You can do it, but it becomes, more of a burden as you progress through that. When I talk about testosterone replacement therapy to people, or testosterone therapy, I should call it, I talk about, it's always going to be about diet and exercise with that. It's not simply, giving you something and it just makes that happen. I want you to be able to, to appreciate those things that are going to help you be healthier. And that's always going to involve diet and exercise and getting, a good night's rest. Anything that disrupts that circadian cycle messes with your hormones in a major way. So that's the other thing right now that I think also leads to hypogonadism or testicular hypofunction. Are computers, the blue light on the blue screen, watching TV to all hours of, we all binge watch on Netflix. Less all that TV and time we spend on the computer is interfering with exercise levels and your body's ability to do what it needs to do.
100%. And that's interesting because I wanted to get to that too, where, obviously you have a TRT protocol, which I know involves the testosterone itself and probably some other pharmaceutical drugs, right? But the other question I had was, as far as like a fitness regimen, what would it look like to get a guy back to like a healthy test level? Because you mentioned resistance training. Would that be 3 to 5 times a week? Heavy lifting?
That's my first suggestion. My first suggestion is going to be what they should be eating first. And so it's kind of progressive. I want them, at least getting up and moving around. We talk about, I have followed, first of all, for cardio, it's going to be the American Heart Association's recommendations. And that is to get that heart rate up. We want you to at least double that resting heart rate for at least 50 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And so however you want to do that, I tell them you can dance, you can jump rope, you can do exercise. It doesn't have to be a separate exercise if you're doing some resistance training. It should incorporate some degree of cardio in that anyway. But so we talk about that. If they just can't find the time or the energy to get to the gym, those things can also be started at home. I think, as they become healthier, or if they have problems with accountability at home, that gym is always a good choice. I always recommend, finding somebody, a coach or, somebody who is, a personal trainer who can help you to do those right exercises. I usually recommend 3 days a week to begin with. I like them to split those days. My suggestion is always a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that's because resistance training helps raise your base metabolic rate for 48 hours. So I tell them, if you're going to get on that treadmill, don't just walk on that treadmill, throw some resistance on it, give you a little incline so you get some resistance training, because that otherwise cardio, without any resistance is, that caloric burn is going to not be happy. It's going to be low, and it's not going to carry you to the next day. But if you have increased that burn and you do upper extremity, do the uppers, the lowers, and the core on each of those 3 days, it's going to help your muscles to recover, and it's going to raise your base metabolic rate for the entirety of the week.
Yeah. No, which is an excellent way to go about it for somebody who hasn't been off the couch for so many years. Because I honestly feel like a lot of the guys that I talk to, it's more about you just got used to a sedentary lifestyle, and it's almost like you just got used to a sedentary lifestyle where you watch TV, you get up, you scroll on your phone, you might go to work, you come back, you're sitting down the whole time, then you sit down again. And a lot of the times it's just lack of movement, which is awesome because I think it's a great way to get people started.
It is, just get them in there and moving in there. And then, we have, I don't know if you're familiar with an in-body scale. It does the full analysis. So it breaks it down, your skeletal muscle, your percent body fat, your visceral fat, the whole thing. Guys like feedback. So anything that gives you, shows you that, the fruits of your labor are giving you this, it's motivating. So it's, muscle weighs more than fat. So sometimes guys are disheartened. They may even see it's not uncommon after, 30 days after they come back to me in 30 days, have another set of labs, and we talk about how they're doing, and we go over the in-body, but it's, we may see that they gained 6 pounds, but that whole 6 pounds was in skeletal muscle mass, and they had a 3% drop in their body fat. Skeletal muscle mass always equals loss of, a decrease in body fat. And so we talk about those healthy levels and how to reach that. We talk about, raising that skeletal muscle mass helps increase your base metabolic rate. Just doing, these fad diets, and cutting this out, or starving your body of of enough calories to meet your exercise routine is not going to help you in the long run. You're probably losing muscle mass, and you're not going to get where you want. You're always going to have weight issues. So we have to talk about it from the ground level up, and that's what we do.
Yeah, and so what would a good diet plan for that same dude who's sedentary? He comes to you, he's like, okay, 3 times a week, got it. What does a good diet plan look for this guy who's maybe, let's say, about 200 pounds? What is the nutrition protocol? Do you guys have a diet that's preferential, or is it always just kind of something custom made with a nutritionist or something?
It's not, no, we don't really, ours have all of our diet plans have been, reviewed by a nutritionist, but it's custom made. I use the InBody, the scale and their BMR to actually kind of give me an idea of what their caloric intake should be. They need to be, I usually have them download an app on their phone and before they start to do anything, just look at what their daily caloric intake
Yeah,
is.
my
Because
fitness pal.
yeah, they never know exactly. They never really know that. No guy wants to do that their whole lives, but I tell them do it for a few days before you start and then help you develop some eating habits. We all basically eat the same kind of things, but you got to learn
Yes.
portion sizes and the right foods to eat. I like pescatarian diet. I like Mediterranean. Paleo is a good one. My mainstay is usually going to be Mediterranean, not because you have to cook their things, but because it uses healthy foods. So
Hmm.
those lean meats and those plant-based proteins are so important. We talk about limiting bad carbs. Anything that has white sugar, white flour, white rice is not your friend. And then avoiding starches. They got to pick up the fruit and vegetable intake. We talk about eating routine meals per
Hmm.
day, at those times, and I want them to have protein for their snacks in between. If they have to have a snack, grab a handful of nuts. But basically learning that this is a lifestyle change, increasing your skeletal muscle mass. As you increase that and you raise your base metabolic rate, it makes your body burn fat. So,
Yeah.
at some point in your life, if you've done all the work, then you'll be able to have those cheat days and eat all the things you want. But until you're to that point, you gotta learn how to eat right first.
No, and I agree with that completely because I mean, I'm gonna have a pizza every now and again, and I'll enjoy a hamburger every now and again.
Yep.
However, 90% of the time I'm eating the same things. And that's kind of thing is that
Yeah.
I think a lot of us don't realize we always fall into a routine.
Yeah,
There's
we do.
always a default.
Well, it's and with fast food the way it is right now too, it's really easy to just drive up somewhere and not want to cook. But I mean, there's all sorts of places right now that do food preparation for you that you can just have delivered to
Yeah.
your front door, throw it in the oven. So it's not really so much an excuse anymore. There's lots of different ways to do that. We are associated with somebody who does food prep for our clients. If that's what they want, they can have that delivered to their home. And we try to, we have people that are committed to we call it a performance coach or an accountability coach to
Hmm.
call them or get them to come in and get on the InBody to give them that more constant feedback because we need that sometimes.
No, I think a lot of people do, and the main reason why they fall off, and my main job as a coach, like honestly, is like, hey man, you didn't log your food yesterday. Log your food, man. And it's like, boom, okay, I'll do it, man. I'll do it. And that's kind of my job more than anything. And the way to make it actually work is to hold people accountable. And a lot of people that have never had that, somebody kicked them in the ass the whole day, it's almost like, oh, geez, like, okay, fine. It's like you got to spur them into the right direction. I think a lot of it comes down to that too, right? It's like, are they going to adhere to the plan that you give them?
Well, and I can tell when I talk to somebody if they're going to have like today. I had a new patient came in and I was explaining how it all worked and I want you to get to that point. Life is too short not to enjoy life, and there are some good foods. And I tell them, you should be able to do that. You should be able to have those moments. You just have to be accountable and responsible the rest of the time. But when I hear him, like he said, if he wants to wait until after the holidays because it's a few days before Thanksgiving and he needs to
Yeah.
get through Christmas. Christmas is one day in December. You can have that Christmas meal with your family on Christmas, but it isn't the whole month of December.
That's the thing. It's like almost people are looking for an excuse, like, well, I'm gonna have cookies and might have a couple drinks and some eggnog and this, that, and the other. And it's like next thing you know, if they just track their calories, it'd be like I'm eating at a surplus of 1,000 calories a day.
Yep. And then we get some people that are so motivated that, they're seeing that in-body scale. They're making a difference. They've got their visceral fat down to a level 1. Their percent body fat is 8%. And they're very, very motivated. So now they're working out 7 days a week, but they're doing 1,000-calorie burn sessions, and they haven't increased their caloric intake. So now they're losing muscle mass and their percent body fat's coming back up. So we have to have that discussion about, what that basic metabolic rate means, that's when you're laying in bed, not moving any muscles. And so when you get to moving around, and, if you're having if you're having to consume 4,000 calories a day to meet your exercise needs, you need to back off your exercise.
Yeah, the exertion's a little bit high.
Yeah.
Granted, that kind of brings me to another question that I had in mind in regards to that. What about athletes? Are athletes able to work with you as well, or are there some certain, guidelines or restrictions that keep athletes from working with you, like professional athletes?
We do have some professional athletes that are in our practice, and most of them are not using the hormone therapy. They're using some non-traditional concierge type treatments, and those things are the IV vitamin cocktails.
Okay,
yeah. So they're using the vitamin cocktails to help get them that energy in a more natural way. They're using some of the herbal supplements that help to increase their testosterone production. We have things like Male X Booster. We have, I'm trying to think of everything. If they are if they go on vacation and they have alcohol, they may want to go on milk thistle just to detox that liver, or IV glutathione is a great liver detox too, to just protect your organs. Everything you're doing is, we can enjoy things in life, but if you're worried about how they're going to affect your life, we want to be able to point them in the right direction and keep them healthy as they're moving through life. If at some point their testosterone is low, then they can always do that at that point, but they can't do it while they're actually doing playing pro ball or college ball, because it gives them an unfair advantage. It's all about the unfair advantage.
Yeah.
So, you don't get to do that, and nobody else on your team or the other team gets to do it.
But then my question becomes, if there's a healthy range, and let's say could they not argue that, hey, I'm not in the range that I'm supposed to be, I want to bring it up a couple notches?
They do make that argument, but they still don't let them do that, because I can bring them back up to normal, which would be the treatment, and it's an unfair advantage. So they don't let them. They typically do not let them do that, regardless. So really, it's very, very rare I see an athlete who's that physical, who it doesn't have testosterone levels that are in acceptable ranges. So you can do that by, again, those things that help to boost that testosterone naturally is going to be making sure you're getting enough sleep. Anything that disrupts the circadian cycle is a huge drop. It's like dive. It's a submarine of that testosterone. Make sure that you're avoiding foods that help to stimulate estrogen production. So soy, any foods with soy and is terrible for that. So you got to be sure you're eating the right foods. Make sure that you're, again, doing plenty of cardio and resistance training. And people that play sports, they have that. So the one factor that's the hardest one to actually keep control of, it's dealing with stress. So sometimes, I've had that conversation, Pilates or yoga, or, developing some meditation techniques that will help you to, just slow everything down so you can, get through it. But you can't let things get to you. You have to be able to figure out how to deal with those things.
Interesting. And you mentioned supplements earlier. What kind of supplements would you recommend most guys be taking kind of on the regular to keep testosterone levels up high and just stay in good shape?
So good question. So same ones that are helping you for immunity right now. So I think vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc. So those are the big ones. Magnesium, calcium, making sure you have enough vitamin D. The majority, that's the other thing that's happened, in the last decade or so that is new, is all the people with vitamin D deficiency or insufficiency now. And your body needs to have vitamin D to use calcium, and your heart and your bones want calcium. So we stress the importance of natural ways to to increase that vitamin D level: salmon, eggs, spinach. But also, if you need to be on a supplement, get on something. We use vitamin D3, the liquid, because if you take an oral supplement and it hits your gut, it's destroyed. So your vitamins, notoriously, vitamins and minerals, once they hit that bile, you don't get any more. You only absorb about 40% of what you take. So we like the sublingual because I don't want to be on something where I throughout my life, but put it under my tongue so I get the full amount.
Yeah.
And get that level up, earlier, rather than, I have people come in all the time and they're still low vitamin D and they've been on supplements for 3 years.
Wow.
So it's like, something's not working here.
To say the least. I mean, if I've been taking something that long, I'd be pretty pissed off if it's like, it's still not working.
Yeah, it's still not working good. So we talk about stretching too. Stretching, before you exercise, after you exercise, important to build long muscle fibers as opposed to short, because short is going to increase your odds for it decreases your range of motion and flexibility, and is going to cost you in the end. Long muscle fibers also have more cells, so increases your base metabolic rate even more. And that stretching exercise also is, it helps to naturally relax your body. So it helps you to deal with stress as well. So that helps to improve your testosterone levels.
Interesting. It also calms the central nervous system,
Yeah.
And it's something that can't be overlooked, which is awesome because I think a lot of people do just kind of take it for granted and say, oh, you don't got to do any of that, but I'm a big fan of meditation. Yoga's my wife's more into yoga than me. I haven't really tried it out. However, I've only heard good things, and a lot of dudes that do some hardcore combat sports, they speak about how marvelous it is. So
it is. I've been doing it for 25 years. It's a game changer for flexibility. You're working those muscle groups. Pilates actually is a great muscle builder. So it helps to women in particular like that. Men don't like it so much. But
yeah, I don't know if I'll try it, but it looks cool.
Yep.
No, that's interesting because it's kind of like, and what I like about your approach, Diane, is that you're really viewing it more from a holistic kind of side of things. It's not so much just put on muscle, you'll be all right.
No, it won't be all right. It should be that we're making you be the better you. And that's what we sell, it's the men's wellness league. The whole idea is about health, wellness, and prevention. I'd rather you didn't have to be on it, but I know that the need is there. And, I'm passionate about it. I know that, having some of those improved hormone levels makes a huge difference in your life. But if you can't do it, for any reason, and there's many different reasons why some men have that besides, I just want to have better and I'm just going to work out all the time. And, that hormone, hormone, that P axis, we have to really pay attention to how our body, pay attention to your other hormones, your thyroid, your pituitary gland, we're looking at your luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, prolactin, all those things play off of each other. So we have that whole discussion and why we monitor those things and try to lead you in that right direction. If you have things, I try not to just write a prescription. A lot of those prescriptive medicines help, but they also have side effects. I lean towards, vegetable-based or herb-based supplement recommendations for those same types of complaints and, rises in DHT, dihydrotestosterone, that leads to hair loss and acne. I like, so when you think about that, you think about Nettles Max or Stinging Nettle. It's a natural DHT blocker that doesn't have side effects.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Because you see it in bodybuilding all the time. That's why so many of those dudes are bald, right? And I'm just like, I don't want to be bald.
Their head because they're going bald.
Or it just becomes a popular thing that's just associated with it. Because again, going back to all the guys that I know that did it wrong, they all got arthritis, a whole bunch of them got bone issues, and they're all bald. So I'm like, man, you did not do this right.
They didn't, and if they just thought about it, so that's why the nandrolone decanate. That's it's FDA approved for people on treatment for hypogonadism or testicular function, for joint pain. So if joint pain is interfering with your ability to work out and you're having it, I don't want you. Your body's response to any kind of inflammatory process is to send more reparation material, so platelets, white blood cells, red blood cells to that
Mhm.
area, but it's self-propagating. So in the long term, you'll end up having a chronic inflammation, which leads to arthritis. You know, you
Yeah.
start to lose that space. You may have to have joint replacement surgery at some point in your life. So I want to interrupt that inflammatory response by teaching you how to eat and what to do to help bring that down. But the nandrolone decanoate, that's why we typically stack those. The testosterone and the deca for that is just to make sure that you're moving around and that we're reducing that inflammation until you can start to improve some of your other lifestyle, diet and exercise to help improve your overall outcome.
It's absolutely fascinating. I could talk to you all day. However, I know you gotta probably jet on out of here after the hour, but I want you to tell us more about Nuber and what this company really is about.
So Nuber Men's Wellness League, it's been about men's health. When the owners had first established this business several years ago, there's lots of places available for women, but they didn't really see the same opportunity for men, and it was important for them to have that for them. We have a beautiful offices here that we offer a place that feels masculine and sporty. When you come in for your initial visit, it's called an initial combine visit. We kind of, everything's kind of based around sports for men because they can identify with that, but in a comfortable environment where it's concierge. So I can sit down, and instead of going to the doctor's office when you get 5 minutes or 15 minutes with the doctor, that I can sit down and talk about, what's important to you and offer you choices. So it's, I don't do sales. My job is, from a medical standpoint, what could you do to help you meet your overall goals? And sometimes it's adjusting those goals that they have in their mind, or a reality check and how they should start with this. But having those conversations and being sure that we're able to point those people in the same direction. We do obviously some hormone therapy, but we also do some joint injections. So with the platelet rich plasma, we do hair restoration with the platelet rich plasma. We do a lot of erectile dysfunction therapies like P shots.
The P shot, I was gonna say.
Shockwave therapy is another one. We offer a magnitude of different types of therapies. There's always the Viagra's, the Cialises, and Levitras, but as well there's those intracavernous, those penile injections. If everything else isn't working for you, we want you to, having happy, healthy, regular sex is also contributes to testosterone. So if you're not having enough sex, it leads to erectile dysfunction, but and vice versa. So, but we want to keep that testosterone level up, and that means having sex frequently. So we have all that discussion, so guys kind of know what's coming down the line. It's a big picture.
Absolutely awesome. I admire the work that you're doing. I'm super happy to learn that, hey, places like this exist, and you're doing God's work out here. So
well, I love it. Every day I go home with a smile on my face because I can see those differences. And guys love being able to make them. Guys are fixers. They want to have data, and they want to fix themselves and everything around them. And I love it. I love seeing them every time they come in and hearing the changes that's made in their life for the better. The quality of their life improves dramatically.
100%. I could only imagine the dude who's been suffering all his life who comes in, and then after about, maybe 6 months of treatment, it's a whole new dude.
Yep, it is. There is.
New lease on
these
life.
Testimonials for that reason. So
100%. But Diane, tell us where we can find you. Give us all your socials, all that good stuff.
Okay. You can find us online. We're actually on Facebook. We are menswellnessleague.com. I have to look up the word because I can't really remember it half the time because I don't get to go there. But if you go to our link, you'll see something that there's a button for scheduling. Just push scheduling, and it'll allow you to give your information. Somebody can call you back. Or if you prefer, you can reach us by calling 404-480-5229. We are in the Atlanta, Georgia area. But if you're living anywhere near, we do some telehealth visits. Depends on what state you're in, but we're happy to talk to you at least and see if we can help you, or if not, if we could point you in the direction to somebody near you that could do the same type of thing.
That is awesome. With that being said, any closing words, Diane?
You guys, in this day and age, Don't let everything get you down and stress. Realize that, spend more time on you. A lot of men, they care about their family, and I hear that a lot. A lot of men come in and they really, really are, they need this right now. Just don't ignore yourself. It's worth your time and effort to make you a better you, and that's gonna enhance your family so much more than kind of letting them go before you all the time. Take care of yourselves, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm so passionate about what we offer here, and I know we're not the only ones that offer that, but reach out to somebody if you haven't already, and see if what you can do to make you a better you, and grow older without having to be on a bunch of medication.
Awesome. That's a perfect way to end, Diane. It was an absolute privilege. And for all you guys watching, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And until the next one, guys, take care.